This next session, I have to say, I'm really curious about, because I really never thought before about the intersection of artificial intelligence and public relations. So we're going to hear from our dear friend, Martin Waxman Communications. I'm going to invite him back up to the stage. And he's going to tell us all about the intersection of AI and PR. And we'll also see how many acronyms we can fit into this presentation. So, Martin, over to you.
Save that till the end. But thank you. It's always great to be the final person between sort of you and drinks. So that's a little bit of pressure, but hopefully, let's make sure this works. Yes, good. So you saw me earlier. You know I have an agency background, and I actually transitioned into digital and social media strategy consulting a few years ago. And in that time, I started to do more training, more teaching, and I am also a student. So this is like research that I'm doing as a student, and I'm a LinkedIn Learning author as well. And I'm here because my bot was already booked. You know, it's got a better agent than me. Google Duplex? Okay, that was to read the room. And now, how many of you have heard of Google Duplex? Okay, you will shortly. So let me ask you, how many of you use AI on a regular basis, by a show of hands? And that should be all of you, because it's part of everything we do. It's part of search, Google Maps, digital voice assistants, Netflix. If you drive a Tesla, you're using AI. AI is here. And it's only going to get more and more pervasive. And it hasn't really penetrated the enterprise, so our workplace, in the way that we've all anticipated or dreaded yet. And I think PR, as an industry, seems really unsure of what our place is going to be, what role we play in an AI world. And there's so many buzzwords around it, and we use them, but we don't really know what they mean. So what I want to do is kind of try to give you a framework to understand what AI is, and then point to some things that we can do as communicators to hopefully establish our role. So the first thing is there's two distinct types of AI. The first one is artificial narrow intelligence, ANI, and the second one is artificial general intelligence, AGI. And they're very, very different, but we often confuse the two of them. So if there's one thing I want you to take away from today is understanding the difference between ANI and AGI. Narrow intelligence, ANI, is single purpose. That means it's designed to accomplish one specific goal better than us. So if you think about IBM's Watson, when it beat the Jeopardy champs, that's narrow intelligence. Self-driving cars, narrow intelligence. Digital voice assistants. And, you know, we kind of think, well, if we were only doing one thing, we could probably compete with that. But, you know, really we can't. We're much more complex beings. And when AI becomes a little bit more like that, able to transfer knowledge and complete multiple tasks at once, that's called artificial general intelligence. And AGI is what we most see in movies and on TV. So if you watched Westworld, the host, so Doris, you know, was this AI bot gone bad. Her, you know, an example of an AI that just was a voice AI. And there's certainly, AGIs are smarter than us, and they could possibly become conscious. Nobody really knows yet, but we've all seen what happens in The Terminator. Now, I'm not saying that we shouldn't worry about artificial general intelligence. We really should. And I would encourage you to read this book, Life 3.0 by Max Tegmark. Max Tegmark is a professor of physics at MIT, and he poses some really fascinating but also terrifying scenarios of a world with a super intelligence. And he asks all these great questions in it, like, is it ethical for us to enslave a super intelligence to only do our bidding? I mean, is it ethical to treat them like a slave? The second thing he asks is, and if that super intelligence suddenly changes its goals, how does that affect us? Anyway, today we are focusing more narrowly on narrow AI, because really that's what's having the biggest impact on our lives right now. I'm not an engineer, I'm not a math whiz, but as a communicator and someone immersed in social and digital media, I knew I had to get a handle on narrow AI and figure out how it could transform our industry, the marketplace, for better and worse, and also what we as PR people need to do to keep up. So, a little history. For starters, AI is not a new concept. Started in the 1950s. The idea was coined by John McCarthy, who's a computer scientist, and his idea of AI was trying to teach machines to solve problems in a more human-like way. So I thought, in order to understand AI, I'd travel back to the 50s and see if I could find some more clues, and I found this, right? The magic 8-ball. A lot of you are familiar with this. You ask a question, it gives you an answer, and it suddenly hit me that the magic 8-ball is like an early form of AI, because AI is all about predictions, and that's just what the magic 8-ball does. The difference, data, right? The magic 8-ball has no odds of getting better, no matter how many times you ask it a question or how many of its responses come true. It's impervious to data. It's artificial, but not really intelligent. Narrow AI needs data to work. You could even say it's ravenous for data. And that's probably a good thing, because we now produce, this number is mind-boggling, 2.5 quintillion, I like saying quintillion because I don't get a chance to say it much, bytes of data each year. And while that volume is really quite overwhelming, we can break the data down into 3 distinct types. First type is structured data. Structured data is the stuff you're familiar with in spreadsheets. It's labeled, it's organized, so you see it all the time. Second one is unstructured data. Unstructured data are the words we say, the images in pictures, the images in video, and then right in the middle is semi-structured data, which is a combination of the two. And if you think of a platform like Twitter, Twitter's a great example of semi-structured data. You have the structured part, which are number of tweets, number of followers you have, and then you have the unstructured part of it, which are your tweets, your images, stuff like that. AI is really very simple. The more data we give a machine, the better statistical predictions, and that leads to better results. That's it. That's all that's all artificial narrow intelligence is. But the key to that is statistics. Of course, AI can now interpret context from the things we write and say, and just so you know what it means, that's natural language processing, which means it understands what our words are, and computer vision, which is how it recognizes images. How many of you searched for an image, like using an image, searching for an image on Google or Pinterest? Yeah, it's pretty incredible, the results that you get, because they're really, really close. So how does all of this work? It works through something called machine learning. Again, another term we hear a lot but don't really know. And machine learning really, an AI learns to make better predictions by trial and error, kind of like us. Well, actually it works more like the way a child learns. So if you think about how kids learn, they absorb the world around us, they imitate patterns that they see, they make assumptions, they get feedback, and then they adjust. So in the beginning, an AI is just like a small child that doesn't know very much. Its world is the data we feed it, and it learns by absorbing that data, which is really a mishmash of things. You know, it's words, phrases, labeled pictures, sets of numbers, and then it's algorithms, another word that we don't really understand. And all an algorithm is a set of steps that you follow to complete a mathematical process. That's it. That's all an algorithm is. Anyway, its algorithms look for patterns in all that data, those 2.5 quintillion bytes of data, to make a prediction based on whatever has, and here's that word again, the highest statistical probability of being right. And the algorithm is adjusted so that based on its results, it adjusts what it does the next time it makes a prediction, and those predictions get more and more accurate over time. And of course, one thing we can't forget, we still need humans to validate those predictions. It's not just a machine going off on its own. So let's look at an example of AI in action with something you do every single day. Search, 93%. So almost all our online experiences begin with search. Google uses AI to power its semantic search algorithm. Who here knows what semantic search is? Anybody? Yeah, Corinne. Yeah.
So when you're searching and let's say you search for Obama, it will connect you with US presidents.
Yes. Yeah, former U.S. president, but yeah, no. No, that's right. A semantic search recognizes a relationship between words. So when you ask a question, that's why it can answer it a little better, and it also knows that Martin Waxman or any of your names are probably a person. And now they've gone one step further with a conversational interface. And I don't know how many of you tried it, but if you haven't tried it at home, in Chrome, doesn't work in Safari, enable your mic and ask a question. You say, who is the President of the United States? And a voice will come up. The President of the United States is Donald Trump. Then open a new tab and say, who is he married to? Not who is Donald Trump married to, who is he married to? And it says he is married to Melania Trump. Then open up a third tab and say, how many children do they have? And it tells you how many children they have. You open up a fourth tab, sometimes you get the right answer, but it is getting better. So pretty soon, it will really understand our context. And it's good because Google understands us, but also a little bit scary. Whoops. It's a little scary because it gets us and what we want. And that's the beginning of building trust, which is a fundamental part of PR. AI is only as good as the data it's fed. So we think of data, a good metaphor that I like to use is it's the equivalent of a great meal. And just like people, we can fill our data with junk food or healthier choices. And if your data set is all junky or has very little variety or veracity, so if it's not really true, because you haven't spent some time making sure it's diverse or clean, the AI you build will be filled with errors and biases. And that's really bad when you're talking about predictive analytics for projections for your organization, but it's worse when you have biased data for facial recognitions. Data bias and a lack of diversity is why Alexa and Google Assistant are having trouble understanding questions in accented English. So if you have an accent and you ask Alexa a question, you won't get a good response, and often you'll get a nonsensical response. Or why Amazon's facial recognition software matched 28 members of Congress with convicted felons. I know, pretty interesting. So they've got some work to do on that. And they've recently, I don't know how many of you read this yesterday, it was announced that they closed a hiring AI that they had developed that was favoring men over women for technology jobs. So they realized that, they made some, and that's an ethical question that we have to deal with, and we've got to get this right, because facial recognition mistakes could change an innocent person's life. And in China right now, they are testing facial recognition glasses, so like Google Glass, whatever, that police are going to wear to identify suspects on the street. Did anyone see Google Duplex's demo? One person back there. Maybe we'll play it after because it really, if we have a couple of minutes, because it's fascinating. If not, Google Duplex demo. Anyway, Google came up with a new technology, a voice assistant that actually makes calls to restaurants and to hair salons to book appointments for clients. And it sounds really real. In fact, it sounds so real because they have pauses, they have the ums and ahs that people do. So they built all those disfluencies, so speech disfluencies, into the AI. It was so good that the people at the other end didn't know they were talking to a machine. And Google, after the kind of shiny excitement wore off, so a day or so later, got a lot of criticism over the fact that they were duping people. They weren't being transparent. They weren't telling people that they were talking to an artificial machine, and that's not right. And so they changed it so that it is now going to be self-identifying when it calls restaurants, and it's being launched, I think, in October in 4 cities in the US. So 4 cities where you don't need permission to record someone when you're talking to them on the phone. Anyway, transparency is an ethics, again, both issues that fall under the purview of PR. What about relationships? Well, 3 of the factors that help engender trust in a relationship are speed, consistency, and accuracy. And right now, machines have got 2 of these down really well, and they're getting way better at the 3rd because of all the answers that we willingly provide them. So think about it. Your chatbot texts back with an answer right away. Your BFF, maybe not so much. And as machines start to look and sound more like us, and when I was writing this paragraph, no kidding, I got this email in my inbox. I saw a notification from Google Assistant to simplify my day. Anyway, as they start to look and sound more like us and give us the answers we need quickly and seamlessly, we could start to trust bots more than machines. And it's not that big a leap. Because if you think about it, if a passenger in your car contradicts your Google map directions, who do you believe? Do we teach children to be polite to machines, to Alexa and Amazon Assistant when they ask them questions at home? And if so, are we bringing up a generation that can't tell the difference between a human and like a smart blender? Right now, both Google and Alexa have settings that reward kids if they're polite when they talk to those assistants. So bots discipline kids. Not sure I'm happy about that. Relationship building and trust. Again, it sounds a lot like PR. In fact, I'm starting some research right now on human-machine relationships and how they're going to affect interpersonal relationships and trust. So stay tuned for that, maybe next year. There's also the matter of work and all the disruption we're going to see when machines replace humans on a wide scale. And you know, there have been so many studies on this, but unfortunately there's been no real consistency with how bad or maybe how positive the upheaval will be. On the one hand, Doherty and Wilson, who are 2 consultants at Accenture, they're more optimistic about it, and they envision a kind of human-machine collaboration where people are responsible for training machines in being more empathetic, explaining, so the explainers, communicators, on how AI decisions are made to various internal and external audiences, and ensuring data quality, security, and ethical behavior. But if your work is made up of repetitive tasks, and it's not only factory workers, taxi and truck drivers, it's accountants, it's stockbrokers, it's financial advisors, it's legal researchers, radiologists, marketers, and communicators, we're kind of at risk of being displaced for no reason other than machines are cheaper and more efficient. So how do we get businesses to think of their workforce as an asset and come up with new roles for us, retrain us, rather than just using AI as an excuse for profit-driven layoffs? Chinese venture capitalist Kai-Fu Lee believes that we need to find jobs that AI can't do and then train people to do them. And we need to really do that now. In order to accomplish that, we have to reinvent education. But can the academy shift its priorities quickly enough to ensure that all the skills it's teaching are relevant once students graduate? Because so much has changed with social, digital, and now AI in the last 10 years alone. And then how can organizations rethink their staffing and training in a humane and compassionate way? Yeah, there's going to be some layoffs, but maybe there's an opportunity to retrain some of your best people. And then what do communications professionals need to learn about AI to become more productive and achieve our goals? The speed and scope of all the changes that we're going through remind me a lot of the early days of social media. And because there's this combination of excitement, unfocused yet enthusiastic testing, and then a lot of fear and trepidation. Christopher Penn, he worked at Shift Communications now as his own digital analytics agency. He observed that there's a deeper knowledge gap between what marketers and communicators know and need to know about machine learning technology and what the gap was with digital, and that coupled with our just innate fear of mathematics is going to pose a really big barrier to our adoption. And what Penn believes is that we have to develop a basic literacy for data scientists. That doesn't mean we have to be the coders, right? But we need to understand, if you look at the bottom half of that slide, you can see their soft skills, their communication skills. We need to learn how to think like a programmer. I think there's a lot of opportunities for communicators to take a leadership role in the wider enterprise adoption of AI. What I'd like to do is just offer you 4 strategic recommendations on what we can do right now. First thing I think we should do is be the leaders behind an organization-wide AI audit to identify potential issues, opportunities, gaps, challenges, and really help develop some of the policies. And this will help position the communications team as a strategic integrator. And we can start that by meeting and strengthening the relationships we already have with the heads of all the other departments and finding out, what are they doing with AI right now? Because there's no consistency across organizations. It's really siloed. What jobs could benefit from automation and how that might affect their workforce and what new skills might be required. We also need to start that discussion around data privacy and the ethical use of AI. Okay, I mentioned I'm completing a master's, so maybe I'm biased, but I think the AI knowledge gap is really an opportunity to break down the barriers between academic research and the industry and spark a dialogue and a partnership. Researchers need to develop those theories, and then the industry needs to test it by trying out the applications in real time, providing feedback so that we don't get left behind. And this collaboration could identify areas for training that could be developed both in the workplace and in the classroom. Third, I think we need to reimagine the PR curriculum. It's done a pretty good job of adopting digital and now multimedia, but we need to integrate data science, fundamentals of coding, statistical analysis into all our communications program. The McMaster Syracuse program that I'm in offers a course in data science for communicators. It's incredible. I mean, if there's one thing I'd encourage you to do if it was offered is to take that course because it really changes the way you look at AI. And finally, I think all our professional organizations, PRSA, IBC, Council of PR Firms, Page Society, IPR, should work together to make AI research a priority and figure out a global strategy to help prepare us for the next onslaught of change. I mean, we can't remain complacent about the adoption of AI in communications. We've got to work diligently to reshape, retrain, and reinvigorate our professions. And I think we've got to stay curious and critical, build new relationships and collaborations, and then actively participate in the debates, not just be on the sidelines. And above all, we need to ask ourselves, how will AI continue to affect our work and life? Thank you. I'm open to some questions if you want. These are 3 resources. I'd encourage you, if you want to read more about AI adoption for business, those are 3 great books. The one in the middle by Chris Penn is an ebook, and it's I think pretty inexpensive. You can buy it on his website. It gives some great practical examples. The others are more for leadership. Questions? Yeah.
Question over here, if I may. I've seen a lot of talk about bots creating PR nightmares, creating fake news and fake accounts and all of this stuff. What kind of impact do you think that's going to have on the communications industry over the next few years?
I think it's going to have a big impact. I think it's already having an impact because we don't know if our stories are being amplified by real people or by bots. And I mean, maybe this is a good thing that PR people are so bad at coding and stuff because we haven't really started to use bots in the way that some of the less than scrupulous agents or other governments are using them. But I think it's something we have to watch out for, certainly. And it underscores the importance of relationships. And, from the panel that we did on influencer marketing this morning, Pierre said one interesting thing: don't go for those numbers. Because if you're going for those numbers, chances are some of them are, those people are maybe, those followers may be artificial and maybe bots. And so go for those more authentic relationships. But it's a challenge. I'm not, Anyone else? Yeah.
Mr. Waxman, or Professor Waxman.
No, just Martin.
So some companies are starting to use AI to dissect a press release. What are some thoughts, just off the top of your head, where you think that consuming a large amount of data in the form of many press releases, let's say 350, 550 a day, and dissecting those for semantic relationships between entities inside. There's a few applications just in the business side. We can make Facebook ads with those in a much more automated way if we were able to do that. What are some other great applications maybe you stumbled across?
Oh, that's a great question. I think, and I mentioned Chris Penn. I would encourage you to subscribe to his newsletter, CS Penn. He has a great weekly newsletter. He talks a lot about that in his book. And what he talks about is, for us as communicators, we're not usually dealing with big data. We're kind of dealing with smaller data sets. Like what you were saying, 500 news releases, it's a lot for a person, but it's not really a lot for a machine. So how do we take the principles of big data and apply that? What he said, it's really a great thing to do for developing stories. So for example, you can add in, 500 or 1,000 press releases, or you can take all the stories that have been done for the last 2 or 3 years around a particular topic, put it into a Google Sheet, and with not too much coding knowledge, you can extract which trends are happening, and you can start to predict, okay, in November, we know that bloggers are likely to write about these two things. If it's a beauty blogger, dry skin, for example. So knowing that's a trend, how do we get our organization, if our organization, deals in that industry, how can we come up with stories around that? We can really use it to predict things. And that tool is available to us right now, but so few of us do it. We rely on our gut. And when we rely on our gut, that's good. But it doesn't lead to data-driven decisions. Yeah.
Hi, Martin. I have a question. Can artificial intelligence being used to produce non-biased news reporting, and will it replace journalism one day?
I don't think so. I hope not, right? It is being used, and yet, Facebook is trying to do it to figure out the difference between fake news and real news. Twitter's trying to do it. It's a challenge. I think humans need to play a part in that, too. The other thing is, so many headlines, this, right? Financial headlines are written by bots. Washington Post uses bots to write headlines because if you're covering, quarterly reports, it's like baseball. The same terminology, same cliches are used over and over. So a lot of the things you're already reading are written by bots. But, that's automated stuff. And really, if you're a financial journalist and you've got to write, 150 words about a quarterly report, that could get to be a bit of a drag. But I think it really, that there's a case where, like Doherty and Wilson said, that human-machine partnership is so essential. And hopefully we'll keep it up. But, we need humans to be able to tell the difference between what fake news is, because it's being served to us. And that underscores the importance of developing media literacy in schools. Because I used to trust what I read in newspapers like blindly, but now you read everything, or at least I try to read it more critically. Yeah.
Thank you. You started with saying that there's some scaremongering about AI going to take over the world. I don't believe that. I don't believe they can do anything in leadership. They're just a machine. They must be programmed to do anything. They don't have any in the genes, no desire to anything.
I agree. They are just a machine. And that's the problem, because we're confusing it with the singularity, right? Singularity is a concept that Ray Kurzweil, I think, coined. where machine intelligence will eclipse human intelligence. There's all sorts of predictions about when that's going to happen. Some of the ones I've read say it'll happen around 2040, but nobody really knows. And will machines get conscious? Like, will they be able to manipulate us? Who knows, right? Hopefully they won't. But, right now the AI, as you said, we don't need to fear it. We need to understand it and how we can use it and also what we need to learn. But I do think because of the confusion between artificial general intelligence, that conscious AI and narrow AI, that people are scared because we don't know. Plus, you add the insecurity about an already volatile job market, it just adds to stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm curious on your thoughts around accountability, so thinking through things like self-driving cars. Would the accountability fall to the programmer that came up with the algorithm, or from a machine learning perspective, is it the user input?
Well, again, that becomes an ethical question, right? Because if you're in it, and that's, again, where we have a part to play in answering that ethical question. So you have a self-driving car, right? You program it. Do you program it to do everything it can to save the people inside? Or do you program it to do everything it can to minimize damage? Those are two very different goals. So if a kid's crossing the street and they know by hitting the kid, everyone inside will be safe, does it do that? And then what does that say about us? So all of those are really difficult questions. Max Tegmark, who I mentioned, who wrote Life 3.0, he talks about beneficial AI, which is, coming up with a moral and ethical framework for it, a system to be able to figure out how are these decisions made and then communicating that transparently, because if not, we're in deep trouble. Thank you.